And we are live. So welcome everyone to this amazing panel, How I Got Here, with Karen Rodriguez, Cherisse, Gill, and Ronell, Hugh. We're so excited to share with you this tricks and tips that they've had over the course of their career, and stories of inspiration for how they got to where they're at in their career right now, and where they're thinking about going, so that they can share that with you. As you're coming in here, go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us where you're tuning in from. Tell us what questions you have for these amazing panelists, and let's get the chat firing. With that, I wanted to do a brief introduction to the session today. So if any of you are podcasters out there and you've listened to the How I Built This podcast, this session is meant to be somewhat of a parody off of that, in that How I Built This brings in amazing innovators and entrepreneurs and talks about how they built their company. And so the How I Got Here session today is talking to like-minded, amazing professionals that have done great things in their career about how they built their career and some of the tricks and tips that they have for you. So I'm excited for everyone to be tuning in. If you have any questions or you want to say anything in the chat or provide some inspiration, go ahead and put it down there. Either way, let's get ahead and get this kicked off. So instead of doing long introductions to and mentioning all of the crazy cool things that these panelists have done in their career, I wanted to let them introduce themselves. So I'll have them answer these three questions. Panelists, where did you grow up? What do you do now? And what do you enjoy most outside of work? And so maybe we can start with Karen, then we'll go Cherisse, and then Ronell.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I think that the stories we're about to hear are going to be amazing, and I hope they're inspirational, and I hope that they also give you, get you in tune with your passion so that you can pursue a career in something that you love. So as you know, my name is Karen Rodriguez. I was born in Dominican Republic, but I moved to the United States when I was 10 years old. And I'm originally from the Bronx. That's actually where I grew up. I've lived in Utah for about the last 10 years. I am the head of diversity and inclusion at Purple, and I also lead a lot of the different advocacy and marketing efforts for the Utah Black Chamber, which I'm really excited about. If you've seen some of the advocacy work and how we put our foot in the game and kind of help take care of the community last year. But something that I'm really excited about building is my own nonprofit that connects young Black and Brown individuals to tech, education, and job opportunities. And that simply sprouted out of my desire to uplift my community and make sure that they have the access to be financially stable and build generational wealth and health and safe environment so that they're able to thrive. So that's called Code and Color. I'm really happy about it. You can check out our story. It's on Netflix. And I am just really thrilled to have the opportunity to share and learn from everyone on this panel.
Really
That's
cool.
my spiel.
Karen, that was awesome. Cherisse, what about you?
Thank you for having me, Luke. I was born in Trinidad and Tobago, and I spent a significant number of years there before moving to the United States. My field is in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I call myself a diversity, equity, and inclusion integration strategist because I think that DEI needs to be embedded into all facets of a company. When I'm not working at my 9 to 5, it's not really 9 to 5, but these days it feels a little more at Workday. I'm very intrigued by design. So one of my hobbies is interior design, and I also love dancing, Latin dancing. So that's what I do when I'm not working.
That's awesome.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cherisse. And what kind of dancing do you do?
Latin dancing. I actually lived in Caracas, Venezuela for 10 years, and I met my husband Latin dancing.
Oh my goodness.
That's
awesome.
So fun.
Yeah.
Ronell, what about you?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm ecstatic to be on this panel with Cherisse and Karen and Luke. Thanks for the invitation to participate. So Ronell, Hugh, we were joking beforehand that this is their Caribbean panel because I am actually a citizen of Jamaica, but you'll learn something quickly about me. I have never lived in Jamaica, but I was born and raised in 3 different countries before I was 10. So grew up in Germany, lived there for 7 years, lived in North Carolina and the States for a couple of years, and then did high school in England. So I'm fluent in German and enjoy the language and the country and the culture. I have been here. I live in Utah, moved back here about just over 4 years ago, lead a global product marketing team on a new product that we launched a couple of years ago, work at Adobe and drive that marketing effort. I'm really passionate about marketing. So most of my career has been in marketing across many different companies and businesses, all actually in either sports, technology, or entertainment. And outside of work, what do I do? Man, I'm very passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion. Recently I have launched an organization, a social enterprise called Breathing Inclusivity, which is the hope is to help a lot of businesses, mostly startups in my mind, but just generally businesses who need a framework for driving better equity and inclusion, how to do that. I've done that now twice at both Adobe and Microsoft. And then I'm very passionate about helping kids. And I've been very on that track for a long time. And I try to do that in my community through coaching soccer. So I coach soccer and basketball, have 3 teams across both of those sports. And so I love to give back to the community and have an opportunity to engage with kids and helping them to meet their full potential in this small way. So that's kind of a little bit about me.
Oh my goodness. Can I have some of the extra hours that you have in every day? My goodness, how do you fit it all in? It's crazy.
As Cherisse said, it's not 9 to 5. I call work-life balance being very intentional when I'm doing those things. So
oh my goodness, you got to be. My goodness, you got your hands in so many different things, and that's awesome. Such a huge part of the community. Before we go ahead and get into some of the nitty gritty and hear some of your career stories, I wanted to start off with a lighthearted note and talk about what your first job was and what you wanted to be when you grew up, maybe when you were younger, and then what your first job was, either out of college or in high school or even before that.
I'll start. When I was a kid, like a baby, I was like 8 years old. I was watching movies I probably shouldn't have been watching, but and shows. Like I was obsessed with Ally McBeal. It was a great show in the 90s. I still stand by my decision to watch it. And I really wanted to become a lawyer. So I convinced my parents that I needed to embark in something giving back, but also like that was law focused. So that stuck around with me. And my first official job was working with the Obama Foundation. At the time, they had a sister arm that was called Organizing for Action. And I got to move from field organizer to policy staffer and working on a lot of policy, and then transitioned into being a lobbyist with the state of Utah. So it was something that my parents were like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you, because nobody sticks to that part of their dream. So yeah.
Oh my goodness, Karen, you are incredible. I was a mascot at a strip mall for my first job. I'm like, holy cow, this is huge.
That was my first real job. Before that, like I did stuff like I clean houses and, the babysitting and things like that. So yeah.
So cool. What about for you, Cherisse? What was your first job?
It was glamorous, but it was so much fun. So my first job was at Republic Bank in Trinidad and Tobago, which I got through a friend's mom who used to work there. I worked in the mail room sorting mail, and it was a blast because we were not customer facing and we could just play soca, dub, dancehall, whatever music we loved as loud as we wanted all day while we sorted mail. So that was like my first real paycheck job.
I'm just imagining you doing like Latin dancing as you're sorting mail over there.
It was probably the most fun I've ever had in a job. It was just really informal, made great relationships. And then when I transferred to different departments. I actually wanted to go back because it was this fun.
That is awesome. Sorting mail. What about for you, Ronell?
I'll give two sides of this coin. My first job, I remember it very distinctively. We were living in England, and I would say I was probably like 10, I was somewhere like 11 or 12. I was a paper boy. So I delivered papers, newspapers, walking around in England from the homes in England and just doing that. And I realized quickly that I don't know if I wanted, I mean, you're just a kid, so anything making money is going to be great. But doing it, being chased by dogs in the rain is not the most fun. And so what I wanted to be as a kid, I actually wanted to be a pilot, and probably got discouraged after I used to play rugby and I lost some of my sight because I got hit too hard playing rugby. And I always had the fear, I'm not, when I say I lost my sight, I can still see, but I mean like it wasn't as perfect. I always had this thought that you had a perfect vision to be a pilot, right? Yeah. So didn't do that, but then coming out of college, I've been you can see over here on the right, a lot of soccer stuff. I'm a big Manchester United soccer fan. So I always wanted to work in sports. And so my first job coming out of my bachelor's was fortunate for me. I worked at Real Salt Lake, a Major League Soccer team, did their PR. And that was where I started my first job out of college. So I went from being a paper boy, delivering news about soccer in a lot of ways in England, and then actually working for a professional soccer team in Utah.
Awesome.
So cool. What dreams do come true, I guess. That's awesome. So we've got, and so I'll get into this a little bit here. We've got a lot of folks here on the line that are switching careers. They maybe come from non-traditional backgrounds. They want to get into a different job than they've been in the past. And Cherisse, you made a really cool pivot and a jump from L&D to product management. And product management, if you don't know, if you're here on the call, is probably the hardest thing to do at a tech company, let alone at a big tech company that's popular and a name brand and all of these different things. But Cherisse was able to navigate that. I guess, what was the process you went through to do that, and how did you navigate that jump, Cherisse?
I wouldn't say it's strictly product management. I mean, if you think of the execution of a learning experience as a product, well, then in that case, yes. But my background is actually psychology. I entered into university to become a psychologist, and I was in a PhD program. It was all paid, and I walked away from it when I realized that I wanted to do more DEI work. And I discovered that when I had an assistantship opportunity at Southern Illinois University at Carbondale, which is where I went to school. And it just opened my eyes to a lot of inequity in the world. And I didn't think I could do both, go on the trend of maybe opening my own practice as a therapist one day and also do DEI work in the way I wanted. And to cut a long story short, because I know we don't have a lot of time, I would say the number one ingredient for me was not staying comfortable for too long. I firmly believe that facing the fear, the anxiety, but surrounding yourself with people that believe in you and that will balance any negative self-talk, the worry, the lack of confidence, the doubt, is what worked for me over the years, and not being too hung up on, but I'm meant to go here, what does going here mean for me? Because looking back, every single detour in my life miraculously culminated into where I am today in an interconnected way, where one experience builds on the other and the other and the other. I can look back to 10, 15 years, 20 years ago and see how every single experience and every single connection meant something. Whether or not it's a connection I still have. So the two things I would recommend is not being comfortable. Relish the discomfort, because you never grow until you have to, really. You'll never be creative until you have a problem, right? You never dig deep until you have no other choice. So relish the uncertainty and don't be too concerned about taking detours. One day you'll see that they all come together and connect beautifully.
Wow. That's awesome. Such good advice. I guess, can you talk to how your network played a role in that? I know you mentioned that like those connections that you made with people had a big impact. Was that relevant for you as you were making career moves in your switch?
I would say yes, but not in the way that most people might understand it to be. I think when we think of networking, we have the idea of, I need to attend a large networking event and cast a wide net. I'm by nature more introverted. I know how to be extroverted, but I'm more introverted by nature. So I am better at smaller socializing opportunities. It's always been more about quality than casting a wide net. And I would say that the jump into tech was an introduction to someone that worked in tech through my brother. Actually was connected to the person, and it wasn't an instant door opener. I met with the person, stayed connected with them for over a year. A job opened up at LinkedIn. I applied, I didn't get it. I applied again, I didn't get it. I applied again, didn't get it. Like I kept just kind of knocking until one day a contract opportunity opened up. So I wouldn't, when you say networking, I would caution us all to think of it as, one event gets you there. It's more like key strategic relationships, nurture them. If it goes where you want it to go, great. If it doesn't, bless it for what it gives you anyway.
Wow, that great advice. And I think the power of those loose ties that you develop over the course of your career, and that you have already. I mean, you mentioned that it was just your brother that introduced you to someone at LinkedIn, and that kind of nurtured that relationship over time, and eventually got the role. Like that, those are powerful. And if you can harness those and keep those going over time, it could be huge. The other thing I loved about what you said is that it's really important to follow your passion and what motivates you, what you're interested in. Like that was the whole reason you left your PhD program and started on this path that you're on now. Karen, this has been a theme, and I know I've talked to you privately a number of times about this, but this has been a theme for you in following, your passions and doing what means most to you. Can you talk to how that's guided your career and what impact, following a passion has had on the things that you do?
Yeah, I am a firm believer that you're never going to do a good job in something that you don't like to do. So, for example, I studied political science. My emphasis was data analytics and economics. International studies was my second major. And I was like, man, I'm convinced I'm going to go, at the time, I'm going to go through this political science program, but they only had a campaigning portion of that. And so that's how I actually ended at my first job. I quickly realized that campaigning or campaign management was not going to be my thing. Like, I'm like, no, that's not Karen. Like, I'm not going door to door. Good luck. Y'all could do that. But what I was good at, and so that's why I asked, is I was like, I need a skill that will allow me to be behind the scenes, but still affect change in my community. And so that's how I landed at that data analytics minor or emphasis within my role. And it helped me understand how to effectively gather information and communicate the reason why change needed to be made. And again, that was in the policy space, but you could take that skill and put it anywhere. You could do that in a marketing campaign. You could do that in D&I work, right? You got to get buy-in to do some of the things that you need to, especially in predominantly white spaces. So that's why I followed that, I took that route. And I leveraged what I learned to essentially lead my passion, and everything that I do has to be related to equity work, whether that's writing new policy on immigration reform, whether that's writing an anti or anti-hair discrimination bill for the state of Utah, whether that's working in corporate spaces to make data-informed decisions that affect D&I or incorporate D&I into every facet of the business. That's what I care about. That's what I'm passionate about. And I just think that we're all better off if we do things that we love. So
big time. And you know what I love about your career, and if you're close to Karen, you'll notice this, is that she's being pulled into so many different conversations just because she lives what she's passionate about, and she breathes that, and it's on her LinkedIn profile, and it's in her conversations, and so it parlays into so many different other opportunities. It's really cool. I'm curious, Ronell, you do so much, and we just talked about earlier how your schedule must be nuts. How do you find what you're most passionate about, and what kinds of things have you done to explore your passions?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think for me, as I thought about my career, actually so nobody in my family had ever gone to college. No one ever gotten a bachelor's or a master's, right? So when I was starting off from a career standpoint, I just had some goals. I wrote down some things that I wanted to achieve, and I literally had them written down. And the last thing on that list was to work for a professional sports team. So when I hit that, it was like, well, what do I do now? Right. And I was like, where do I go from here? Because I was like, I had gone to school. I had, done all these amazing things. And then I was like, that's, sorry to say that, but that's like 15 years ago, 17 years ago. And then I started thinking, I just started writing things down again after that. Like, well, what do I want to achieve for myself? I wanted to get a master's. I wanted to actually work more in the product side of a technology company, like all these things. And I started to figure out that without like making an actual goal, it was impossible. Right. And then it's just like being rooted in kind of understanding who I am and what I'm passionate about. I said at the beginning, I'm passionate about technology, passionate about sports, passionate about entertainment. So in all my different pivots I've made in my career, it's always been in places that have allowed me to grow and learn. I always make decisions, and I love what he said around don't get comfortable, because my wife always hates it when I make this statement. I always say, I'm starting to feel comfortable and I want to feel uncomfortable. And she always hates it because when I say I start to feel comfortable, she's like, oh no, don't tell me we're moving. Are we moving again? I was like, well, not necessarily, but I like to challenge myself. And so that passion for learning has been pivotal for me. I have simplified view on kind of like working in business. And I say there's 3 types of people. And this is my view, so don't take it for what it's worth. There's people who are motivated by learning and development, motivated by money, or motivated by titles. And that's just me simplifying it. And you can have a combination of those things that are good and a combination of those things that are bad, right? I am very passionate about learning. And so I put myself in spaces where I can learn. So where I'm at Adobe, but then I learned a ton about DEI when I was at Microsoft, and really my opportunity to have a voice in that space, and recognizing that I could create change inside the corporations by talking about how we can do better and recognizing our blind spots and how we can evolve as corporations. And so that's how I got to that point, because I learned a lot, and then I took that learning and turned it into a passion and excitement. And I've done the same thing on my marketing field. My background is littered with different types of marketing skill sets. And now when people approach me, they're like, well, you've done so much. Tell me why. And I'm like, well, I love people. I'm curious about people. And therefore, that's why I love marketing. And it goes from there. But hopefully that sheds a light a little bit about what makes me passionate and where my passions come from.
I love this. I love that you mentioned that your motivation behind each move in your career is learning and development. Talk a little bit about how mentors have played a role in your learning and development and career and next steps.
Yeah, that's a good one, because I think it's important. When I was in business school, I did my MBA at BYU. And one thing I learned quickly when I was there, I had access to very talented and successful individuals, like individuals who were CFOs, head of HR, right? And I kept being put in front of these people. And I had this idea, and I've used it since. I have what I call my personal board of directors. So if anybody works for a company, doesn't matter if it's a startup, if it's a publicly traded company, there are board of directors. And what do board of directors do? They give you guidance. They give a company guidance on their strategies, what they should be doing, how they should rethink their product strategy or their culture. And I started to take that to myself personally. So I have several individuals, both peers. So some of them are peers that I went to business school with. Others are individuals I've worked with at various tech companies or different companies I've worked at, and I can call on them in a moment and say, hey, look, I'm thinking through this. What do you think? Much to what Cherisse said around like networking, I think I did this McKinsey Black Executive Leadership Program, and we had a guest speaker. His name was Marvin Riley, and I have the sticky note over here, but it's a quote that he said about networking. He said, you network to learn, not to earn, right? And people tend to think about networking to earn something. I want this, but it's like, no, you network to learn. And I've done that in my career. All these individuals, executives at Nike, the CMO of Samsung America right now, all these individuals have become close friends of mine who have said, hey, what do you need? What are you trying to do? And they give me advice on every aspect, my resume, how I engage or about different jobs, or if I'm thinking about making a pivot, if that makes sense. And they don't have to be executives. Just find people, start with 3 or 4 that you consider your board of directors that you then want to go to on a annual basis, if you will, because that's what I do, and get their guidance and advice on decisions. And by the way, those relationships change from just being about business needs or professional needs to actually being personal. So now I talk about family and what's going on with life. So it becomes broader than just, hey, I'm making this pivot in my career.
That is phenomenal advice. And maybe Cherisse and Karen, you can talk to this too. Like, Ronell, what are some actionable steps that you can take to get your first board member, so to speak, on your side and talking to you? And then while you're responding there, I'd invite everyone, we've got 5 minutes left in the chat here. I'd invite everyone to come in and ask questions that Karen, Ronell, and Cherisse can answer. And I'll go ahead, if you pop them in the chat, I'll go ahead and ask them here. So go ahead, Ronell, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think the first thing I do is just have confidence, like really sit down and think about who you can engage with that you think could help you in terms of create who you are, your identity. Like you think about a board of directors or helping create a culture of a company, right? So I often found, like I remember one time I met with this VP of brand development at Bath & Body Works, and my wife's like, do you want to work for Bath & Body Works? I was like, no. But he was amazing. He had so much career pivots and things that he was doing. So he and I became great friends, even to the point, by the way, where I was in New York at a restaurant by myself, and I turned around and he was there with his family, right? And we started talking. It was so funny. Like, this is New York, by the way, and Karen, you know New York, it's massive. Like,
yeah, I'm like, how did that happen? That's 1 in a million.
But it's just like really sit down and think, who could you add to, who you can go and get advice from that could help you shape who you are and which direction you want to go in. And then when you engage with that person, say, hey, look, I want to learn from you. I'm eager to learn from you, what you've done, why you've done it. And I just want to ask you a series of questions. And it turns into a great opportunity to kind of start that relationship. And then you can, at the end of that, I typically say, hey, I have what I call a personal board of directors. I would like you to invite you to be on that personal board of directors. Would you be willing to do that? And by the way, I've never gotten a no on that question. So
that's really cool. Fantastic advice. Karen, Cherisse, anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, I would add, we oftentimes look for people that we're vertically networking. So you absolutely should look for the person that you want to be. But oftentimes there are people who aren't in the position that you want to be in, but are around you that already know your story and that are your biggest hype man. And they might have some really great feedback for you and help you grow. But they also have a network and they're already your biggest cheerleader. So why not leverage them and help, give them the tools to tell your story for you? That's what I've seen that has worked for me. I do like to, widen my network. But I love building out those relationships with people that are around me. And I've found a lot of success coming from people that know me already, that know like what I am about, that I live and breathe everything that I say, and they think that I'm authentic. They think that I'm passionate. So they share my story. And that's how I get access to opportunities. So leverage the network you already have. Turn them into your ambassadors, I guess.
Super cool, Karen. Cherisse, because we're low on time here, I got a question from Ashley James. what is a good way to learn more about ways to get into the DEI space coming from a different industry and background?
I would answer the question by adding to what was already said in a slightly different way. So great that you know where you want to go. Try to work with the end in mind. Your big goal, capital G, is, okay, I want to get into DEI. What are the smaller goals that can get you there? And maybe the first is, what are you doing now? And how can you integrate DEI into what you're doing now? Are you working on marketing? Are your images representative of the target market that you're trying to reach? Are you working in communications? How does a message land with populations of different geographies? Are you working with product? Are there demographics in the product that need to be more inclusive, etc.? So I would start with, how can you integrate it with what you're doing now? Don't wait to get there to the big goal. Focus on the small G's and integrate it there.
Fantastic advice, really good. And Ashley, I mean, I would follow Cherisse's career as well on LinkedIn, because she's doing some really cool things in the space right now as well.
Yeah, it was all over the place.
This is so cool. And last question here before we wrap things up. Paulina asks, I come from Mexico with my 13-year on marketing experience, and trying to find a job in marketing here in the US seems too hard. She just needs an opportunity. What encouragement or advice would you or give to maybe Karen, if you would give to Paulina as she's trying to find her way here in the States?
Yeah, I think, first of all, it's hard, but don't give up. And I say that wholeheartedly. I say that because of the experience that my parents had. I say that because I follow their advice. My dad moved here when he was 27 years old with like no dollars, and from Dominican Republic. And he grinded. He did both of the types of networking that we've shared here today. And those are the things that landed him an opportunity. But he had to start from the bottom. So sometimes we have to take a step back. I had to do that. Take a step back to be able to get your foot in the door, and then show them what you got, because you got 13 years of experience. You got, a lot of tools in your toolkit. So even if it's taking a step back to be able to get your foot in the door, you got the experience. You already know that you're knowledgeable. You got so much to show. And whatever it is that's driving you, whatever passion you have, or whatever it is that you need to prove to yourself, you could do that once you're in there. So don't give up. Yeah, that's my biggest advice.
Wow. Karen, thank you so much. And thank you, Cherisse and Ronell, for joining today. Unfortunately, we've come up on time, and we've got another session back to back with us, so we have to go. But can people connect with you on LinkedIn? I'm just going to volunteer you over here if they're interested in following you.
100%.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you all so much for joining, and thank you to our amazing panelists for sharing your career experience and stories and advice with us. It's been so helpful, and we look forward to following the success that you have and that this group has ongoing. Thank you, and we'll see you all soon. Cheers.
Thanks, everyone.